Hi everyone, my name is Joseph and welcome to the live show. Just like what we do all the time, the first section of it, we're talking about the one big beautiful bill and how it impacts our clients. The new segment is aimed at trying to help people understand what you don't see on the media, what we're seeing on the ground. So since this one big beautiful passed right here, printed out the whole thing. Over the weekend, I read through everything because we already had a whole bunch of consultation lined up to talk about this with various clients. And you could think, why is the one big beautiful bill impacting immigrants? Well, you'll be surprised because a lot of them are owners of medium to small size companies. They themselves are owners, they have kids here. So this impacts them tremendously, as well as their impact to their taxes and finances and children's education for college. So all that is really important. So I want to share with you guys what are the concerns, how does that impact immigrants in the immigrant community. So we'll dive into that. That'll be the first section of our live session. Then I'm going to take questions, right? So feel free to ask any questions you guys want, hopefully about immigration. That is my field of expertise. I am a certified immigration expert in immigration law. So feel free to ask that. Now, if I can't answer it, I'll let you guys know. You know, there's certain things I can't do, I don't do. But happy to answer any questions regarding immigration. Then we go into our success story live filming. That's the second part where I'm going to talk about an H-1B success story. It's a really good story because it's a company just incorporated, almost zero income, and it's like negative cash flow, zero employees, and applying for a H-1B. It got approved, no request for evidence. Awesome story that I really want to share with everyone. And why are we talking about this today? The one big beautiful bill, as well as this crazy H-1B case where there's no employees and this foreigner is coming in as a H-1B. Because the theme that connects both of them is really the future of America. The one big beautiful bill that is now passed and signed into law, how does that impact immigrants? Whether you are on an L1 executive manager visa, whether you're on an E2 investor visa, whether you're on H-1B or self-petition H-1B, O1, you're working in a company, you are an immigrant and you have kids here. How does this bill impact immigrants? Let me go through everything with you. I printed out the whole thing. I read through the whole thing. This is arguably the biggest legislation that's going to impact us probably in this next decade. So it was really important for me not just to take what is being said about on the news, watching what other people say on TikTok, just relying on ChatGPT and summaries, but it's really important for me to understand exactly what's in here. And as expected, after reading through everything, there were a lot of things that I just didn't find anywhere else online that is actually super important. I do this, I mean, for people who don't know me, I actually do this for all the major bills that are passed, right? So the last one I did before this one was the COVID, the PPP, the SBA loan. That transformed our entire firm, transformed our life. And so it was really important for me to get the first canned copy, read through it, and implement it. But I'm going to do the same thing for this bill. So I'm going to break it up into two parts. The first part is how this impacts people who have businesses, people who have companies, and people who are applying for visas, renewing visas, trying to get green card through their company, right? And that's a lot of people, whether you're on an L1A visa, O1 visa, E2 visa. You know, people spent a lot of money, create a business, they're entrepreneurs, and they're now in the United States. Well, how does this bill impact their visa application? And then the second part is how does this bill impact just individuals who are immigrants themselves? Maybe they have kids, they're going to go to college eventually. How does this impact them? And for these, I actually did a bunch of consultations on this already, right? It's already like the first week, second week out, but there's already been a lot of talk about it. So I'm just sharing what I've been telling a lot of different people. First thing is that a lot of the competitors of your business, if you have a business, you're on E2, you're on L1, if you have, obviously you're going to have competitors. Your competitors, if they have foreign corporations abroad, they're going to be pulling funds back into the US and they will be investing in their infrastructure. So if your competitive advantage against them is that you have an operation that they don't have and they're parking their funds overseas, be prepared for a major shakedown. Because the way this legislation is set up, companies are now going to pull funds from all around the world, the Cayman Islands, Singapore, Hong Kong, Ireland, all the tax havens, pulling it right back into the US. Why? Because before 2017, that was going to sunset the tax benefits. The corporation tax was 35% minimum. It dropped to 21% for a temporary period of time, and that's still only the US tax, and people still park their funds overseas. Now with this bill passed, a lot of the funds that are overseas will be taxed much higher, pretty much at the 21%. And then if you bring it back to the US, it's still about 21%. But the difference is you can expense a bunch of the funds, and therefore you don't have to pay a lot of taxes. Versus overseas, maybe it's a little bit lower, 17%, 18%. You're shaving off a few percentage points, but you cannot expense it. And if you don't have a good investment opportunity, your opportunity cost is not as great overseas, then you're actually losing money. So this bill is set up so that funds from all around the world will be pulled back into the US companies and preventing money from going out. So what does that mean for you? If you have a company that is primarily making money and then sending the money abroad, you are at a disadvantage after this. It makes sense. Maybe a lot of people like it, right? Maybe they're saying like that is the purpose of making America great. So funds come back to the US, stay in the US, and we don't want funds out. The purpose of this bill largely is to make America's corporations and companies much stronger. So a lot of funds will be pulled over here. They go into a lot of detail on how companies can deduct a lot of the capital expense. So again, before the phasing rule, let's say you invest $100,000 in a remodeling. A small business spends $100,000 and remodels up the boba shop, nice and pretty. You cannot expense everything all at once. It was a phasing down from 80% to 60% to 40% to 20%, and then the rest of it is spread out over 5 years. What does that mean? It means cash flow is going to be tight, right? So let's say you make $100,000, you spend $100,000, remodel it. Well, guess what? If you can only deduct 40%, the rest of the 60% is still profit, and you have to pay taxes on that. That's not good. A lot of small business owners don't want to pay that much taxes, so they don't spend the money to invest, especially with inflation this high, everything's so expensive. They don't want to do it, so a lot of companies just are not building. Now, with the One Big Beautiful Bill, OBBB, you can expense everything. You make $100,000, you spend $100,000, you pay zero in taxes. Voila. So this bill makes it so that everybody's going to pull funds from overseas and investing in their infrastructure, buying cars, rebuilding their offices, remodeling, buying warehouses. So if your company's competitive advantage is that other people are not spending on building and you are building, well, guess what? Everybody else is going to start building. So you're going to lose that advantage. If your key advantage was that all the funds that you collect was overseas, so you didn't pay taxes, well, guess what? Now you are at a significant disadvantage and you really need to change up your business plan. Okay? And the thing is, we know a lot of companies do that. If they have overseas offices, both offices can collect funds. So if the overseas office collects the funds, they don't charge the clients here, then they don't have the income, they don't pay taxes. Well, guess what? Now, there's a 21% tax overseas. There's also excess tax if you make money in the US and you send it abroad. And this applies to individuals too, groups of immigrants that make a lot of money in the US, but they send a lot of it abroad. Now, boom, 1% tax on all the funds sent abroad. You might say, oh, 1% is not a big of a deal. What if you're sending in the hundreds of thousands per year, and then you multiply that by the millions, because that's how much US is gonna get from revenue from this excess tax. So what is the impact of this One Big Beautiful Bill, and what should you do, right? What is the key opportunity and advantage of this One Big Beautiful Bill? For people who are on the visas, L1 visas, O1 visas, E2 visas, H1B visas, this is the opportunity to actually build position yourself to get good cash flow businesses that lack capital that you can remodel. So for example, laundromats. A lot of laundromats have gone out of business or is going out of business in the past few years because, COVID, people are not, don't need anymore. But it is a cash generating machine, but it takes a lot of capital expense to fix it up. So prior to the One Big Beautiful Bill, not a great purchase necessarily. You really have to shop and find the diamond in the rough to find a good one that will make you profit. Now, you buy a business, I've done enough laundromat business buyings that you could buy one for like $30,000, right? Some you can even buy for $20,000. You buy the business, you spend $100,000, fix it up, you make $100,000, depreciate all of it, pay zero in taxes, and now for the rest of 10, 20 years, the revenue that it generates, you pocket that.
Have we done business cases for laundromats?
Yeah. So, and just for reference, right? If you have an L1 company, if you have an E2 company, if you have any company, your company can buy other companies, right? There's nothing that limits your company for only doing one particular service, right? Apple, the company, could sell iPads, iPhones, and the Genius Bar, right? And so your company can do different things. So the opportunity now given by One Big Beautiful Bill is that it is a time to buy, to build, because of the tax advantages. A lot of people, when they're doing visas, one of the biggest complaints is that US employees are so expensive, right? Salaries are just so expensive that they don't really want it. So they rather spend the salary overseas, where it's a lot cheaper, or they rather just keep the operation low and then the funds go overseas. The reality, though, when you really drill them down, it's not the salary. It's the freaking taxes that's connected to the salary. Because every dollar you pay an employee, all the additional payroll tax and insurance and everything that goes on top of that. What this bill does is it actually creates a lot of programs where the employer can give money to the employees and the employees' families without being taxed. Therefore, making the employees happier, better, making the company be able to retain better workers. Now, a lot of it is for like family. Like for example, the company can give money to the family's children without paying the payroll tax and directly fund their college and their startup. Great benefit, brand new, never seen before. 100% first time.
How do expenses get deducted in this bill, and how is it different than before?
There's a lot that this bill did. What I just talked about was about the bonus depreciation, and before it was phasing down, right? So I believe it was 80% in 2023, it was 60% in 2024, and then in 2025 was going to become 40%. So whatever you spent, like going with the 100,000 example, you spend 100,000 remodeling. Well, you can only depreciate, 40% of it now. The rest of the 60%, 60,000, it has to be spread out in 5 years. So that kind of sucks. So you have to pay a bunch of taxes now, and you pay a little bit less tax later on, slowly. Now, it goes back up to 100%. So you spend 100,000 now. Well, great, good for you. You make 100,000, you expense 100,000, you're basically profiting zero. So you don't have to pay any taxes. Basically more cash flow in your pocket. That's what this did to the bonus depreciation thing. There's other things like, and this is for much larger companies where you're, by doing R&D centers. Before the limit was like 1.25 million. Now it's like 2 million plus. It's for really people doing like big warehouses and stuff, right? So most people who are doing the L1, E2 visa categories, small business owners, they're only investing 100,000, a couple $100,000. So they're not at the million mark. But still, this depreciation thing is a big deal because, if you are an immigrant, you are investing, you're starting a company, you're coming to the United States. The last thing you want is to immediately be taxed a whole bunch before your business even takes off. And, you might get killed in the cradle, so to speak, right? And so with this, you don't have to be a U.S. citizen or a green card holder to do this because this is just, the change in tax law. So a lot of people invest in their business, they make money, and now they don't have to pay the taxes and they're growing. This bill, again, is incentivizing those who can generate the value. Obviously, this begs the question, can you even make money, right? So if you cannot make money, if you're still at a loss for the next 5-6 years, this bill doesn't really change that much for you, right? Because depreciating 100% now or phasing it out, well, you're still at a loss. You're not even making money. You're still doing the research. So the bill actually probably disadvantages your situation. So this impacts a lot of the immigrant community who are entrepreneurs. Just to give you some facts, right? Some statistics. Roughly 50,000 to 70,000 E2 visas businesses come to the United States almost every single year. 50,000, 70,000. That's a lot of businesses. L1 companies, 70,000, maybe 100,000 every year. Most of these businesses, new companies, startups, are in the retail space, hospitality space, restaurants, import and export. Small businesses that have high capital expense, that have high revenue. This bill benefits them if they have the capital to spend and to create that cash flow. Now, if they don't, well, then that will be a problem. I'm going to talk about the consultation I just did on the L1. Most L1 executive managers and EB1C, if you're an executive manager trying to get a green card, 80% of the time cases get denied is because they cannot prove they are an executive or manager. The government says the company is just too small. Your company is just too small. Your square footage, the number of employees, your operation, just too small. I don't think you're a manager. You're a first line manager, you're a supervisor, but you're not an executive. That's 80% of the denial. And they have new ways to deny it. Like, for example, they're saying you don't have the ability to pay the executive salary, therefore we're gonna deny you. Okay, that's just another way of saying you're not an executive manager because you don't have the capability to make enough, right? So that's what we're seeing on the ground these days. How does this bill help executive managers overcome that challenge and to get the green card? Well, who can make these 100,000 decisions to invest in the operation? The executive manager. So if you don't have a lot of employees, but the executive manager is signing off on these 100,000, 200,000 expenditure deals, that is a good argument. And the reason why people didn't do it in the past is because of the friggin' tax. It's because you spend 100,000, but you can only expense partially. You still have to pay a whole bunch of taxes. It's just not something normal business-minded individuals do. So that is how this one big beautiful bill impacts business owners who are immigrants who are applying for the L1, E1, E2 visa categories. But how does it impact families and immigrant families? From my reading of this one big beautiful bill, here's a stark takeaway. Right now, at least in the past 10, 20 years that we've been alive, going through the college experience, can you get into a good college? Question one. That's hard. But once you get in, do you want to go in debt to go to this college? That's question two. But that's usually the end all calculation. Can you get in, and do you want to take out this amount of loan, 50,000 loan, 80,000, 200,000, 400,000, right? This bill makes it so that it is almost impossible to be able to get the loans you need to go to college and to go to grad school. What I mean by that, they limited the cap that the government is going to give to the loan applications. And colleges are only going to get more and more expensive. So based on this limitation, it's going to be so much harder to take out the loan that's required to go to these universities, especially the really good ones, right? This loan is totally sufficient if you're going to a state school or you're going to go to community college and then you're just going to go to a university for 1 year, 2 years. But if you wanted the normal 4-year experience at a nice elite private school, the government is no longer really funding that. So you can have private loans from families. And if you want to go to grad school, the loan decreases even more. You might say, that's okay, doesn't affect me, but you have to think about what this will change for America in the future. much less people will be able to afford colleges and therefore cannot go. Much less people will be able to go to grad schools and therefore cannot go. And so it's gonna, if you think the wealth disparity and the access and the opportunity is a lot now, it's gonna be even greater then. Because the people who can afford to go to those universities most people won't be able to. That's one big, huge takeaway from this. Now, to offset that, but not really offsetting it, the One Big Beautiful allows for more pathways for individual families to fund their children's education. For example, they created like the Trump account. It's like a brand new 529 college fund, essentially, to be able to let employers give money to their employees' children so that they can grow their tax savings, so that they can fund their college tuition or startup later on in the future. That is wonderful if you have the employer, if you are the employer, if you are wealthy already. So for wealthy families that don't need the loan from the government, a lot of new vehicles to transfer wealth to their children to go to these elite universities. For families that don't have money, they can't use these tax-saving vehicles. College is gonna get a lot more expensive. They can't get the loan, they cannot go. So what do you think 20 years from now will look like? By the way, this is starting next year. So if your kid is in high school, is in junior high, and you are relying on the college loan, it's gonna get so much more expensive if you can even get it. This bill significantly impacts the wealth disparity of this nation for generations to come. College is gonna get a lot more expensive. The wealthy is gonna get even wealthier because they also increased basically the estate tax, so the wealthy people can continue to give a lot of wealth to their children without being taxed. I was almost certain that was going to change. The United States already has one of the most generous estate tax available worldwide, almost arguably, but it got even better based on this bill. So again, my takeaway from reading through this bill, how to position it for our team, our company, for our clients, is that this bill, the vision for this bill is that it's gonna make the wealthy even wealthier. It's gonna make the companies who can make money have even more cash flow. It's gonna strengthen the strong. And so if you are capable, if you have the ability, if you've been in the US or the US is your home and you want to invest and you want to grow and build, this is the time to do it because it provided additional pathways for that. And if you don't come into the flow of the United States economy at this point, it's just gonna get harder and harder and harder. So anyways, that's sort of some of the big takeaways that I got from the One Big Beautiful Bill and how it impacts our clients. Now, I'm willing to take immigration questions before I jump into the crazy H-1B success story.
Someone with a CIMT misdemeanor, they were honest, so crime of moral turpitude, for those that you don't know, they were honest and disclosed everything on the N-400.
Yes.
Can they be denaturalized?
Oh, okay. So the context of this question is somebody who's applying for citizenship. They were honest, they disclosed everything, including the crime of moral turpitude, and then they got it approved, so they became a citizen. Now, can the government go back and denaturalize them based off of the crime of moral turpitude? The short answer, right, if you're talking philosophically, if you're talking about with what is within the power of the US government, the answer is yes. Of course they can. If they want to, of course they can. On what grounds, you say? Well, in the provision for denaturalization, it says whatever they deem appropriate. So they can say the officer that was reviewing this application didn't do it correctly. So we're not saying it's fraud and misrepresentation on your part. We're saying it's our bad. You shouldn't have gotten it in the first place. You already got all the privileges of being a citizen for all these years, but it's our bad. Now we caught it. Now give it back. Now give us your citizenship back. I don't think that's going to happen personally, honestly, right? If you watch the video about denaturalization, I went through all the different factors. Your situation doesn't sound like what they're going to go after. But if you're just asking philosophically, can they? The answer is yes.
Before the Trump administration, I was always sent to secondary because of my DUIs. Now, last time, the CBP officer told me they will always have to do that, and that's just going to continue until I'm a citizen. Now I'm off probation, 2028. Can I travel to see my wife, whose I-139 is currently pending?
Let me help clarify a couple things. If the only issue is like a one DUI event, it is not multiple crime of moral turpitude, you are not at risk of deportation, then go, don't worry about it, you might be pulled in secondary. That's the only, right? But if you have multiple criminal offenses, then, and you might be deported under zero tolerance policy, then probably don't go, right? Because you're really rolling the dice here. So that's my second feedback. My third feedback is look into the DHS TRIP, Department of Homeland Security, Travel Redress Advisories, right?
Yeah, inquiry program.
Inquiry program, there you go. We did enough videos where even Galen memorized it. That is where you communicate with the CBP officers and say, hey, look, I've already been inspected so many times. You're wasting government taxpayer money inspecting me again and again. I'm already cleared. Don't worry about me. Basically put that in the system. And you have to do that every single year. So it is true that your information is always in the system and they're always going to pop up and therefore they're always going to pull you in. But if you do the DHS trip, it might override it every year. And so you can actually come in more freely. So that's my feedback to your situation.
I don't think this is a hateful question, which is why I'm going to read it.
Okay.
Can a lawyer, it's kind of a jokey question, can a lawyer defend my love for freaks? Pride flag.
Can my...
freaks, I think, is in a positive way, and not in a negative way.
Wait, I don't understand the question. Can a lawyer defend
My love
for
freaks.
What does that mean?
I think it's just like, I love freaks.
But what does that mean? What is a freak?
Well, okay, so this is why I say I don't think it's a hateful question, because I added a pride flag after. But I think that's like in a positive way. Freaks in a positive way.
So if the question is, can I get married with a, homosexual, a non-traditional marriage situation, but you get married, can you still petition them and can they get a green card under the federal law now? The answer is yes. Not always, right? I think it was, the DOMA was struck down by the Supreme Court several years ago. So before, homosexual marriages were not permissible. So, you could get, you cannot help your significant other get a green card, just like married couples. But now you can, and we've done that a lot. Now, it is slightly scrutinized a little bit more. I could totally tell you that because, marriage fraud is high. So if, you had heterosexual relationships, heterosexual marriages, and then suddenly you have, homosexual relationships and marriages, the officer might think you're just trying to do this for a green card, right? And so it does get scrutinized a little bit more. But you could do it, and lawyers can help you make the case better, just like what we all do.
So someone says, is this better than DACA? I'm not sure what exactly they're referring to. Maybe they mean, has DACA changed? Is it gotten better?
Okay, yeah. Does this bill help people who are in the status of DACA? If your child is a U.S. citizen, you are a DACA recipient, you can still benefit from a lot of the things that are in this bill. For example, a lot of the Trump accounts where your employer can give money to your children to fund for their college without you needing legal status. I mean, like you needing a green card, that still works, right? If you are in the retail industry or if you're in any business where you receive tips, well, this bill cancels out all tax on the tips. So that's nice, right? So this bill does help and benefit a lot of people who are in DACA status as well.
I'm an LPR for 25 years.
Green card holder for 25 years.
I had a DWI minor, minor DWI 7 years ago. Now, can the new law HR 875 be retroactively applied?
Oh, sorry, I actually don't know that. Yeah, okay. I don't know what that law is.
I didn't get my renewed work permit authorization, and it has been 11 months. Can you help with that?
11 months is a longer period. Usually we see them approved within 6 to 7 months. My recommendation, use the USCIS EMA system first. Call USCIS, ask to speak to a secondary officer, say it's almost like a civil rights violation on your part because you really need the work permit. Give them a really good story, right? you have a newborn child, your wife needs it, or give them, because this is your ability to work to make money to sustain your life, right? So that's the second thing. The third thing is potentially contact your local congressman that can potentially help, so that all they do is really just send an inquiry to USCIS for them to expedite it. So those are the three things that you can do on your own. You don't need to hire anybody to do it. If you hire people to do it, obviously they're charging, right? But those are three things that you could totally do on your own.
My first marriage was non-bonafide. My second marriage, the 485, has been approved. Will citizenship be an issue because of the first marriage?
So I think this is the question. Your first marriage was not a real marriage, but your second marriage resulted in you getting a green card. And then you became a citizen, right? Is that right?
I think they want to apply for citizenship.
Oh, and then you want to apply for citizenship. What is the risk and pro and con, right? So typically, the citizenship officer reviewing the citizenship application does not go back and re-adjudicate the green card. So let bygones be bygones. That is generally what the officers are trained to do, what they're supposed to do. The interview is supposed to be just 20 minutes, test your English, check if you have any criminal histories, etc. And just, they generally speaking, a lot of these USCIS officers, in my experience, they want to approve people's citizenship, right? They like doing it, it makes them happy. However, if it's blatantly clear to an officer that your first marriage was not bona fide, was not real, you shouldn't have gotten the green card in the first place, they might even deny, if they see that, they'll deny your citizenship and they will potentially even revoke your green card. So know that. Now, you're saying your first marriage is not bona fide. It depends on what the record shows, right? So if USCIS has substantial proof that your first marriage is not bona fide, then they will do that. If the record is iffy and you got your green card, even though in your mind the marriage was not bona fide, that's not what USCIS's record shows, right? I just want to put that out there to let you know the risk that you're taking.
How can the lower class citizens benefit from the One Big Beautiful Bill?
I am assuming lower class citizens, you mean people who are not wealthy. Okay. I mean, I want to believe we're all same citizen. I understand immigration doesn't feel the same way. Well, for better or for worse, the One Big Beautiful Bill is big and it touches on a lot of things. If you're going to try to weigh and balance everything, there's a lot of debate that it's good for America, bad for America, good for the wealthy, but there are provisions where it does help people who don't make enough money. It might not be a lot of help. It might cancel out, other things might cancel out the benefits. But if you're just looking at it specifically, there are things that help. For example, the whole issue of no tips, the whole no tax on tips, the issue of employer being able to fund your children's education, the whole idea of overtime, you're not going to be taxed. And who gets charged overtime? People who are not salaried, right? Or people who are like nurses who generally have to be abused by the system and work a lot of overtime, right? And so if you consider those, people who are disadvantaged, they'll have a little bit more money to take home.
I was born in Mexico. Okay. I became a U.S. citizen in 2012, not a dual citizenship. Can I go back and get dual citizenship?
Well, yeah. Our staff just did it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the U.S. allows for dual citizenship. I know Mexico is very happy with it. So, if you qualify, whatever requirements, I hear is actually not too difficult. Go ahead and do it. Yeah, we know plenty of people who are dual citizens. Not all countries allow for dual citizens. I'm not going to name them, but yeah.
Should we be concerned about the memo saying ICE will no longer grant bonds?
Oh, yes, that sucks in a way. Yeah, it really sucks. Let me put this in context for everybody. If you get detained, ICE is supposed to register you and supposed to go through a risk assessment to decide if you are supposed to be detained or not detained, like in a detention center, right? So ICE picks you up. Their primary goal is to register you. That's their main thing. But then they have to go think, okay, should we lock you up and detain you, or should we release you? they're in the past, they have a lot of discretion to release a lot of people because they don't want to spend government money to house everyone, to detain them before trial. There's a small set of people who they're supposed to detain, they have to detain. There's mandatory detention, there's too big of a risk factor. So that's in the past. Nowadays, that mandatory list have expanded based on that new memo. So a lot of people who might even have certain equities are now mandatory detained. So my advice is if anybody is in a situation where they are likely to be detained, really plan out your file so you could try to persuade the officer to not detain you, to release you. But if they have to, then immediately make that decision. You can make that decision now. If that happens, what are you going to do? Is the whole family just going to leave, do a voluntary departure, right? Or wait through the whole trial and fight it out, right? In the past, 10, 15, 20 years, a lot of people who have strong arguments, they will not be detained, so they get bailed out, and then they prepare their case, they fight it through immigration court. The Republican Party, a lot of people think that's people abusing the system. It's not fair, but unfortunately, right now the situation is ICE is just, there's a mandatory detention for a larger group of people.
Now, this one's about U visas. I know we don't do them. My cousin qualifies for U visa or VAWA, but he has a criminal record. Is he going to have an issue?
The most wonderful thing about the U visa is that it waives criminal records and a lot of things that other pathways to green cards do not. So the U visa is the broadest and the biggest way for most people who cannot get green cards in any other way to still get a green card. Now, for people who are like, what, how, right? Why is the U visa so special? It's because you're helping the police catch bad guys. So if you are part of the law enforcement, they give you extra grace. That's the general trade-off idea.
Someone is detained currently. Criminal charges were dropped, assault, family violence, but they've been in the U.S. for less than 10 years. Can a bond be requested? He received a VR in 2016, but returned a few days after.
It's complicated. You can always request. It might not be approved. That's the short answer, right? My gut feeling is it will probably be denied.
Is it true that U visa is about to be eliminated?
I haven't heard anything officially. I suspect it won't be eliminated by law. In practical terms, like in order to apply for a U visa, you need a police officer to write a statement for you. If the executive branch, if the governors, if everybody stopped doing that, then practically U visa is eliminated. But that will require basically the police force, the governors, the executive branch to make that decision. But a U visa is created by Congress. I don't anticipate Congress changing that anytime soon. It is an important function.
Is it safe right now under this administration to apply for advanced parole for DACA?
Yes.
DACA advanced parole.
Hands down.
Definitely.
Yeah. We've done so many videos. We've been advising people to still do it. We advise people when they still come in. We did success stories of how people came in, how we did it, which port of entry. Yeah.
If detained and have DACA without criminal record, and they're married to a U.S. citizen. So DACA, detained, married to a U.S. citizen. Is that, what's the risk?
I feel like you should be able to get bailed out. The mandatory detention does not really apply to people in your situation unless you have a criminal record, right? Like a severe one. So because you have a U.S. citizen, because you're a DACA recipient, you have enough equities that you can present your file to present to ICE so they can let you out. Potentially not even paying for bond. Okay, I've seen cases like that where you just register.
Green card holder with DUI on record, will that affect re-entry to the country?
You'll probably be pulled into secondary. You'll probably be asked if it's your first DUI. The worst thing they do, generally speaking, is next time come in, we want to see the whole transcript, exactly what happened, give you a warning. Chances are one DUI just directly confiscating green card, canceling your green card, giving you an NTA, going before immigration court. I think the chances of that are very low. But if the DUI is drug related, game over.
I had DWI back in 2015. got my green card through VAWA this year. Am I at risk coming back into the United States?
Because you just got your green card, generally speaking, the customs officer defer to your green card approval. But if you get another criminal offense after you got your green card, then when they count, now you have two, then you're in much bigger trouble.
Does having disabled kids help ICE cases? Like, is it a positive thing?
I think the way you want to frame it is when you are trying to convince ICE to let you out on bail, can you use a sob story of having disabled kids? Is that equity? The answer is yes and no. It's much more important what status they are in. So if they're illegal as well, it actually harms your case, right? But if they're U.S. citizens, and if you have a court order that you're supposed to take care of them, if they depend on you, then it changes the calculation from ICE's perspective. But again, under the mandatory detention rule, if you don't qualify for anything, if they have to lock you up, no matter how much equity you convince them of, ICE's hands are tied. That's why I hate the mandatory detention memo, because it shackles the good officers' judgments. You know, there are good ICE officers and they want to help people, they want to release people, they just want to register them, but now they can't because of a freaking mandatory detention. So hopefully you're not in that situation where it's a mandatory and you can't have enough equities that you can get called out, right?
Got DV 10 years ago and did diversion program. Could I get a bond if I'm arrested?
If it's just any sort of bond, yeah. I mean, most bonds, like as in like a traffic bond, or if it's an immigration bond.
Yeah, let's see. If they're detained by ICE?
So let me put this in context. ICE does not want to detain most people. Okay, that's very, very clear. I just want to say that.
And where is that coming from?
The detention centers are already full. They have to pay a lot of money. They have a quota to register people and to deport people, but not to detain people. So they don't have that incentive. They don't get paid more the more people they detain. In fact, they have to pay more and more work. And from all my conversations with ICE, they do not want to detain people. But they do want to register people, and they want to put people through the system so immigration court can do the right thing to deport people. But under this memo, they have to detain a certain amount of people. So most people, if you're not within the realm of mandatory detention, you should be able to get a bond.
If one member of a family is detained, asked for VD, what happens to the rest of the undocumented family members?
I don't know. It depends on what ICE decides to do. So, right, if ICE decides to go out after the rest of the family, then sort of the rest of the family has to do voluntary departure too, right? So it really, it's not automatic. It's not like you do an action and then it suddenly applies to everybody else, yeah.
I got approved for H-1B. Can I not activate it and keep it until after grad school 1 year later?
You have to activate it. Yeah, so somebody apply for H-1B, October 1st is the start date. If you don't activate it, you sort of lose it. And you stay in grad school, whatnot. Now, what most people do is you talk to the school, defer it, right, or continuous to do part-time study so you can work and study at the same time, right? And then you start the October and then you work for like a month or 2 months, and then the employer lets you out on leave or ends it, and then you finish your school. Then you activated your H-1B, so the lottery is still yours. And then after you graduate, you go back to the employer or another petitioner, and then they file H-1B again. But at least you don't have to do a lottery thing all over. That's the way most people have done it in the past.
The follow-up question, how can the school allow them to study on the H-1B? Don't they require an F1 status to study with the school?
I was assuming you were already on F1 status. Your I-20 was still there. You might file for H-1B transfer. You could contact the school to defer your studies or study. If I remember correctly, under H-1B, you can still study. Double check that. but in my memory, when I was reading through all the different statuses, who can study, who can't study, H-1B, you might be able to still study. So I've seen that kind of case happen where they talk to school. I have half a semester left before I graduate, or in order to graduate, but I start my H-1B. Can I just finish that one last class? And the school said okay. The employer said okay, right? Because H-1B, you don't have to work full time. You can work 20 hours, right? So you work 20 hours, you study, finish schooling, continue working. So I remember that happened a few years ago.
Can ICE detain U.S. citizens?
They have the authority to check anyone's status, and if they have reason to believe you are not a U.S. citizen or not a green card holder, they are illegal because you look like it, because you can't speak English, because you haven't presented anything that shows otherwise, they have the authority to pick you up and check. And if you get lost in the system for 2-3 weeks as a US citizen, because they're checking, well, then you got detained for 2-3 weeks. I'm not saying a hypothetical. This actually happened. We heard it straight from the mouth of an ICE officer. I mean, they're apologetic in tone. They're not like bragging, but it's still like a very sad situation that we're seeing.
Is it better to apply for citizenship or than to wait for my green card renewal?
If you qualify for citizenship and you like the citizen, you want to be a citizen, apply for citizenship.
If a person has dismissed charges, can they apply for citizenship?
Yes, but do not count on the dismissed charges to alleviate any question into your good moral character. The officer, even with just a pure arrest record, can determine that you are not a good moral character and so therefore deny your case. So just because your case was dismissed does not mean they're not going to question you. They're definitely going to question you. And if you cannot convince them otherwise, they will still rule against you.
What if you're a US-born citizen and you have your passport on hand, can you get detained? And I will say there has been news articles of this exact thing happening.
I would be so shocked.
It has happened.
I know, but like if you show them your US citizen passport.
They said it was fake. Sorry. That was with a real ID.
Oh, okay.
It is the news article. They said the real ID was fake.
Okay. Well, ICE has one job, right? To figure out who's here, who's not here illegally. And they don't have a data bank. They have to go ask USCIS. So they pick somebody up, goes back to their office, detains them, and checks with USCIS. And so if you have a passport, it's very easy for them to check. And then, your day might be ruined, but at least you won't be detained for 2-3 weeks.
Okay, the last question. I'm sorry we couldn't answer everyone's. We will do this weekly, and you can always schedule a consultation if it's related to a case. Should I carry my passport with me when I go out and about?
If you look like...
Meaning, like, you could be racially profiled, basically?
Oh, yeah. ICE is trying to go after people who are illegal immigrants in the U.S. If you look like an illegal immigrant in the U.S.
Meaning, like, if you get racially profiled.
If you get racially profiled. Your skin color, the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you dress, if you can't speak English, please carry identification so ICE does not waste their time and waste your time. But if you are fluent, it's almost clearly that you are, U.S. born, or you have status, they probably won't pick you up. But wrong place, wrong time, we've seen this happen again and again, they could. So when in doubt, carry it. Just to let you know, I carry it. Just letting you know. Okay. All right. We have to get to the success story. Sorry.
We will be live at the same time next week, so you can.
Yeah. So during these live sessions, I also do a live recording of a success story. And just want to show you guys exactly how we do it. This success story is about an H-1B visa holder getting approved without a request for evidence, but the company was just established, no employees, zero revenue. They're kind of at a loss. How can Trump's America allow this to happen? Is it okay for a complete startup with zero employees, just like a small little office, approve an H-1B application with zero requests for evidence? How did it happen? Let me walk you through everything we did so you can see. Grace and her team did a fantastic job. And so I have the whole case right here. So I'm going to go through it with you. Okay, let's get to it. Hi everyone, my name is Joseph. I'm the managing partner here at Tsang and Associates, where we solve legal problems with creative solutions. So the legal problem here is that an H-1B sponsor, a startup company with 0 employees, wants to hire this individual to come. Now, the background of H-1B is you're supposed to be hiring a specialty worker. You're supposed to be hiring somebody who has a special skill, their education, their training. This company has hired people like it in the past. Other companies hire them. They need to come. If you take a step back, obviously, if a company is a startup with 0 employees, it's hard to prove so many things, right? It's hard to prove this company has previously hired other people if they've never hired anyone. It's hard to prove that this company has the financial capability to pay this person's salary if it's a startup with 0 revenue, with 0 clientele, right? It's hard to prove that this is a real operation with a real employee if, again, it has no activity. So how did we go about doing it? It was definitely hard. We were preparing for the worst request for evidence, and we were extremely surprised the case got approved. So just letting you guys know, there was definitely that luck, right? We were telling the client from the beginning, right? They did their own registration after getting selected. They found us and said, "Could do our H-1B." I'm like, "Oh wow, this is a really hard case. Are you sure?" We totally would have recommended using a different company, but too late. You already chose this startup company with 0 things. Now we have to make it work. So how do we go about doing it? I have the case in front of me. First, this is a cybersecurity company, and one of the new pushes for for making America great is how to make America stronger, how to make America safer, and how to make America more prosperous. So this application, because they're a cybersecurity firm, we leaned a little bit into that, even though they don't have many other things. We provided 13 exhibits. I'm just gonna go through that with you. Exhibit 1 was just all the company basic information, so that's not anything special. Delaware Division Incorporation. Then we talk about all the amendments to all the company with all the certificates of incorporation. The third is the office lease, recent bank statements, again, invoices, very little funding, like $10,000, right? It's insignificant. Corporate documents from their partnering companies overseas. So that's where we really went in deep to talk about. They have another parent holding, they have other companies overseas. So even though the startup in the US is very small, but their operation abroad was huge. And they got Series A funding, they have lots of money, and they have this big vision, and they won lots of awards, all overseas. But this US company is brand new startup. And the reason why they actually started it is because a lot of the funding requirements and the investors said they are only willing to fund if it was a US entity. They're not gonna fund overseas. So the company, huge Singapore company, all these other companies around the world, all right, fine, we will set up a US entity, we'll transfer one of the executives over to run it. So they need it. So we use all this context, right? The beneficiary salary was top tier, level 4 H-1B, over $200,000 in salary. Nice, but the company's bank account barely had $10,000 in it. But we showed that overseas they have a lot of funding, and they are going to make it happen. We showed the series funding. Now, what's really interesting was that there was a catch-22 here, meaning the investors were not willing to invest unless they have a U.S. company and operation. Okay, that was a contingent. The U.S. company cannot operate without this visa holder. This visa holder, our client, is trying to get the H-1B, but if he doesn't get it, then can't get the funding. So we use the funding to say, if we got the H-1B, we will have the funding to pay the $200,000 salary to run the business. All really catch-22-ish, but it doesn't matter, right? Because ultimately, we want to prove that to the U.S. government that this company, the services they provide, is good for the clients in the U.S., it's good for cybersecurity. This person graduated from an Ivy League university, equivalent, let me just say that, Ivy League equivalent, and high salary, big operation abroad, won a lot of awards. With that, even though it was a startup, the case got approved. We provided so many things that we normally never apply for an H-1B application, right? We provided bachelor, diploma, curriculum. Those are all normal stuff. but we don't have like other employee duties because there are no other employees. It's just their duties, right? So the entire attorney brief was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages talking about what the U.S. company does, their clientele, the organizational chart around the world, their vision, their funding, their awards, the services, and why they need to come. But again, pure startup. But you can see the strength of a good education background. You can see the strength of having just other reputations abroad, right? Because I feel like the one way we could make this work is basically say, this person could apply for an O1, right? If they really wanted, they could apply for O1 and get it and come here. So just give them the H1B, right? I don't know. We usually like to combine different visa categories and use different arguments, but that is, I mean, because we just never do startup H1Bs with 0 employees, right? So we were really cautious and preparing for the worst request for evidence, but it worked. Letting you guys know that this works, it's possible. USCIS approves these type of cases, and you might ask, how is Trump's America allowing this to happen? Aren't you supposed to be hiring American and buying for America? Aren't you supposed to be making America great? How are you approving H1B visa categories for foreigners with 0 employee in the company? Again, the consulate officers, the Department of Homeland Security, the new vision that we just got this year is how to make America stronger, safer, and more prosperous. It is no longer just pure economic of hire America, fire America. I mean, not fire America, hire America and buy American, right? That was the case for the past 8 years, 12 years, sure. But now, in this economy, in this world, stock prices being at record highs, unemployment rate not that high, inflation, everybody is building, making America more prosperous. That is still a goal, always a goal. But safety is very, very important. And in our world, cybersecurity arguably is the next frontier of World War III, should it happen. At least that was our argument. I don't know if you're convinced. The officer approved the case without request for evidence, so we're very happy about that. If you have any questions about H1B, about any immigration field, feel free to give us a call, schedule a consultation. This case was done by Grace. Very proud of her team. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, and that's it for the success story and the live, and we will do this again next week, next Thursday.
Same time next week. So, sorry we couldn't answer everyone's questions. Feel free to drop in, or you can go on our website, schedule a consultation with Joseph or one of our other amazing attorneys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks, everyone. See you all next week. Okay.
Oh, cool. You get claps this time.